Daniel Sports Center, we go for a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up here in the Pac-12 in Week 12 of this 2022 college football season. And it's going to be for the Utah Utes and the Oregon Ducks. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 12. You got Utah, who is 8-2 on the season. This team has 4 straight wins heading into this matchup. And they're one of, if not the hottest team in the Pac-12 right now. And they're taking on Oregon, who just took their second loss of the season. They lost to Washington last week in what was a tough, disappointing loss there for the Ducks. That loss pretty much dissipates any chances that the Ducks had of making the playoff, which Oregon was pretty much going into last week the one team in the conference that could still have made the college football playoff. So the Pac-12 was pretty much eliminated as a whole from the college football playoff, but obviously you still got Pac-12 contention on the line for both these teams and potentially a trip to the Rose Bowl. So still a lot at stake here in this matchup. We'll be going for a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Utah beat Stanford 42-7, a solid win for the Utes there, and they're once again 8-2 on the season, and they got a 4-game winning streak. This team hasn't lost since early October when they lost on the road to UCLA. And as for Oregon, they lost to Washington, 25th ranked team in the nation last week. College football playoff rankings come out here tonight, so we'll see where both Oregon and Washington stand, but I'd assume the Ducks probably fall to somewhere in between the 11 to 16 range, and Washington on the other side could potentially jump into the top 15. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that was a very difficult loss for the Ducks there. And honestly, it was a tough matchup. Oregon's a team that has a pretty weak passing defense. This team has allowed a lot of pass yards this season, and going up against Michael Penix and the best passing offense in the country. I mean, there's a reason why Washington was favored by some and a lot of people to win that game. It was just a tough matchup for the Ducks there, going up against a really strong passing offense with Michael Penix. For Oregon, they're 8-2 on the season. Once again, their chance of making the college football playoff are just about gone, but still there's a lot on the line here for both these teams. Games will be on Saturday, November 12th in Eugene, Oregon, and your kickoff is 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. That would be 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going Oregon by 3 here, so the Ducks are favored by a field goal over under 62. And the FPI is going with Utah, disagreeing with the spread here, 51.8%. Series history, Oregon leads at 23-12. Utah's won the past 2 games and 3 out of the past 5. So Oregon does have a decent lead in the series, even though Utah's had more success in recent history. Stat comparison for this one, Utah is 17th in points per game, 26th in points allowed. They're 53rd in pass yards a game, 17th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 56th in passing, 37th in rushing. So you got a strong rushing team here in Utah. This team with Tavian Thomas, he's rushed for over 600 yards on the season and 7 touchdowns. He's not the only back who's been significant for this team this season. And obviously you got Cam Rising, the quarterback, 2,200 yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. Not a bad season for him. He hasn't started every game. Dealt with what seems to be an injury there a few weeks ago, but he has returned, and he played pretty well last week against Stanford. And then for yards allowed, their rushing defense is pretty strong, only allowing 121 rush yards a game. And as for Oregon, they're 8th in points per game, 79th in points allowed, 20th in pass yards a game, 10th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, dead last in pass yards allowed. They're 131st in pass yards allowed, so they're allowing the most pass yards in the country heading into this matchup with 290 on average. And they are 14th in rush yards allowed, so the rushing defense and defensive line has been strong for this team. It's just the secondary. This team has been allowing a lot of pass yards, and when it comes down to it for Oregon, you think if they get to a bowl game and they play a strong SEC or Big Ten team, for example, a team that's got a strong passing offense, even a team in the Big 12, it's going to be tough for Oregon. We saw that against Washington. They played the Huskies, who going in were the top-ranked passing offense in the country. Michael Penix had his way, no problem, going against Oregon last week. So, this is a team that has to be better defensively, and that was an issue. Michael Penix had 400 pass yards against Oregon last week, so that explains how Washington got 37 points. And Oregon wasn't bad offensively. They just couldn't keep up with the Huskies at the end of the day. So that's going to be huge in this matchup. Cam Rising, he's going to have a huge game here for Utah if they want a chance to win this one. Recent matchups, Utah beat Stanford 42-7, beat Arizona 45-20, beat Washington State 21-17, and beat USC 43-42. This is a hot team right now. They're playing very well And obviously you got that loss to UCLA 32-42. They lost to Florida back in week 1. But I've been very optimistic about Utah down the stretch. I really like this team. I think they're a very talented team despite their 2 losses. I think this is probably, there's a chance this is the most talented team in the Pac-12. I thought it was Oregon before last week, but obviously they really showed a weakness there last week against the Huskies. But for Oregon, this team has been dominant other than that loss last week. They beat Colorado the week before 49-10, beat Cal 42-24, beat UCLA 45-30, also beat Arizona 49-22. Key points: Utah 8-2. Cam Rising needs to have a big game. This is a time where he can really take advantage of this Oregon defense, and we'll see how he performs. This is a strong offensive team, and we've really seen that in the past few weeks. And this is a huge matchup for both these teams. Honestly, the Pac-12 in general, this is almost like we're almost seeing the semifinals of the Pac-12 this week. You got Utah facing off against Oregon, and you also got USC facing off against UCLA. So 4 of the top teams in the Pac-12, even though Washington has started to crack that top 4, and Oregon State's not far behind. But we're basically seeing the semifinals of the Pac-12 this week, and more than likely the winner of this game and the winner of the USC-UCLA game will be in the Pac-12 title game. So there's a lot at stake here in week 12 in the Pac-12. And for Oregon, coming off of a brutal loss, besides last week, Ducks have been dominant. Once again, I really thought, as did many, and I brought this up a couple of times, but Oregon, this is a team that, with their only loss being to Georgia before last week, I really thought if Oregon won out, that they'd be able to get to the college football playoff. But once again, it's with a 4-team playoff, it is every single game is almost a playoff game, because it is crucial that you win your games, especially a Pac-12 team in Oregon. You can't slip up once or you're pretty much out of contention. But for Oregon in this matchup, they got home field advantage, a crucial game as well. If you're looking at the AP poll, Utah is ranked 10th and Oregon is ranked 12th. And once again, we'll see where both teams stand once the college football playoff rankings are revealed here tonight. But that's it. Let's get to the prediction here for Utah and Oregon coming up here in week 12 of action. And I'm going to go with the Ducks to pull off the win here, 31-27. This was a very brutal game to predict. I think Utah is, I've said this, one of the hottest teams in the Pac-12. But Oregon on the other side, it was just a bad matchup last week against Washington. If you look at this team otherwise, they obviously lost to Georgia in what was an ugly loss back in week 1. But this team has played really well against teams that they have an advantage on, especially statistically. Going up against the top-ranked passing offense in the country last week in the Huskies, Oregon was just set up for failure, being the worst passing defense in the country. So it was just a brutal matchup, and in the end, it showed. But I think Oregon bounces back in this game. I think Utah is a team that could very well win this game. They're once again a really hot team. Their team is playing well. They've won 4 straight. But I think Oregon being at home in this matchup, there's a chance that they come out kind of flat, just coming off of that brutal loss and knowing that their college football playoff chances are gone. But you still got a Pac-12 title that is still in the balance here, and that includes a chance to get to the Rose Bowl, which is a huge game, and it's a huge deal. So I think Oregon comes out ready to go. They get the win, 31-27. I'll say 55% towards the Ducks, over under 62. Give me the under for this one, and Oregon to cover the spread in the end. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. I will be taking the under for this one, mainly because I do think we see more of a defensive battle here. This is still a decently high-scoring game, but in Pac-12 terms this season, it would be more of a moderate scoring matchup. But I think Oregon coming off of last week, maybe we won't see too many points scored. But yeah, in the end, I'm going to go with Oregon once again, 31-27. But I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.